What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, we're going to have a quick discussion, as quick as I can, you know how I get sometimes, about the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, versus the DCEU, the DC Cinematic Universe. I'll probably do a series of videos. So in this one, it's just going to be kind of broad about the two rival studios and how that they've both been approaching their attempts at the shared universe with all of their characters. Okay, so Marvel was started first, so let's just get that out of the way from the get-go. Once Marvel decided to start making movies in-house with their own studio, they started with Iron Man, and well, at least their first attempt at start kicking off a shared universe was with Iron Man, 2008, I believe, maybe 2009, no, 2008, I believe. All right, so now Iron Man, whether they knew it was going to take off or not, they planned that movie to be a great standalone movie, but to have the possibility of opening the door to a whole universe full of characters that would all be sharing screen time, stories, and etc. on the whole shared universe. And Iron Man was a huge success, so of course it worked for them. So they were planning movies out years in advance. They were trying to figure out how to make each movie a good standalone movie, as well as tying it in to a bunch, tying them all in together. So they did that with careful planning, and the first step that they made in the right direction was hiring a person who understands the material, actually has some sort of affection for the material, and also understands storytelling in a movie sense of how movies tell stories. Now, they came up with a formula that worked. It may get a little repetitive, the MCU formula, but they came up with a formula. So they hired the right showrunner, they planned in advance, and they got a formula for these movies so that each one of them can work as a movie or as an isolated franchise, like Iron Man, the 3 Iron Man movies, or the 3 Cap movies, where you don't really need everything else that's going on to appreciate those movies. Those people out there who are fans of Iron Man, fans of Thor, fans of Cap, they can watch those series of films and don't really have to get too engaged into the other characters to really know what's going on. The one exception to the rule is probably Civil War. But even with Civil War, all you need to know is there's other superheroes out there besides Captain America, which you would have learned from the previous movies, right? The Cap movies anyway, right? So it's not that big of a deal, but that's the one movie that I would say, even though it's part of a trilogy of movies, kind of lends itself to saying, oh, well, who's that woman when? How does she have that powers? Or why can that guy turn really small and then really big, and etc., etc. So I can see how Civil War can kind of lead to me saying, well, maybe you want to see at least the Avengers movies before you see Civil War. But with Iron Man, with Thor so far, and I even think with Ragnarok, you're going to get a good sense of just, if you wanted to watch that character, you could. So they did a really good job in laying out the groundwork, the plan, and putting all the wheels in motion to get this train running the way it is, to where it's pretty much an unstoppable train. Now, there were missteps along the way, minor continuity things, but minor. So minor that most fans don't mind. Like they don't reference the Incredible Hulk enough. I like that movie, but they had their own problems with it, studios and creative differences with Edward Norton and whatever. I think even the director had some creative differences with the studio in there, but whatever. It worked as a movie to me. To me, it's a great standalone, and it fits into the universe, but they don't reference it a lot, and of course, there's a noticeable difference in the way Hulk looks in that movie and the way he looks now, and the actor that portrays him, of course, in Mark Ruffalo versus Edward Norton. So there were definitely missteps along the way there, but not many with the continuity thing. And then as far as any other missteps, yes, their villains can be underwhelming. So can their end fight battles can be a little underwhelming. They don't reuse villains enough. Villains don't re-pop up enough. A lot of the times they're not fleshed out very well. You have great actors and great appearances, and you want to love some of these villains. I'll put Malekith as my example. Malekith and Ronan are two of the villains that, to me, where I was really hyped about going into the movies. I'm a comic fan, so I knew who these characters were going in, but even for a non-comic fan, you look at these villains and the ways the movies start, you really are like, oh, okay, I'm excited for this bad guy. And then by the end of the film, you're kind of like, nah. Or they'll kill off a good bad guy, ones that were great on screen, and we'll never see them again. Like, I loved Abomination. Tim Roth as Abomination was amazing. And you don't even need to get Tim Roth back to do it. But Abomination never showed up again. Maybe he will. But so far he hasn't. Red Skull was another disappointment. Zemo was another disappointment. To where they were good. What they did with them were good characters, but they weren't used enough, and they weren't brought back into the fold again. And those are just a few. There's other villain problems all throughout the MCU. And I understand Kevin Feige made Feige, whatever, however you pronounce it, he made a statement saying that this universe is not about the villains, it's about the heroes. And I get that. And Phase 1 should have been all about the heroes. Phase 2 should have been darker, which you could have made more about prominent villains, because you understand who the heroes are. And that's where they missed their opportunity in Phase 2, was fleshing out their villains better. And then Phase 3 could have been all about this great coming to the Infinity War, where you had all these people and villains, humans, cosmic beings, people we've seen, people we haven't seen, all vying for these Infinity Gems. It would have been amazing. You would have been to be able to do a great 2-part movie with it. I'm not saying they're not going to do an awesome job. I'm super excited. I've loved everything they've done so far. But those are the missteps. Really minor continuity things here and there. Not having enough of the characters crisscross, but they've been doing that more in Phase 3. And the villain problem, right? And then there's, of course, the TV problem, which I won't even get to in this video. I'll do another video about the MCU movies versus TV problem and why they can't just fucking put aside their differences and mesh it all together. It would be amazing. And you would make so much more money, and so much more fans will get roped into it when you can explain to them what these characters from this TV show up in this movie, or these characters from this movie show up in this TV show, and the storylines coexist. You know how many people I got hooked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. by the end of the first season because of the tie-in with Winter Soldier? Spoiler alert. But if you haven't seen it now, then, shame on you. Now, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. by no means is a great show, but I liked some of it. It's MCU, and the way they tie in, I at least in the beginning, I really enjoyed it. So I hooked people in on that, where people started tuning into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that normally wouldn't. So if you did this on a massive scale, of course you'd get more viewers on the television, and you would get more people who aren't hardcore Marvel fans, into the movies. Okay, that's enough about Marvel for now. Now DC. When they did Man of Steel, which I liked, my favorite of everything they've done now, but when they did Man of Steel, they did not have, I don't care what anybody tells me, all right? There was no intention of starting a cinematic universe, and if there was, no, let me erase that. There was intention, I'm sure. But was there a plan at that moment? Absolutely not. First biggest mistake with Man of Steel was there was no plan going forward. It was, let's just make this movie. And it was good. Wasn't great. Wasn't the best superhero movie ever. The best Superman movie? Yeah, Man of Steel was. Even though I have problems with it, with the character and the way he was handled. But for the first movie, not much of a problem there. It's going forward where my big character problems come into play. So I have problems with Man of Steel. It's by far not a perfect movie, but I enjoyed it. They should have connected it to the universe. And then all of a sudden, don't ask me what happened. I don't know. I'm not a studio guy. I'm not an insider. So something happened in the inside when they decided we got to get these movies out. We've been taking too long. We need to churn them out. We'll plan it as we go, or we'll make a short-term plan, or we'll just plan what movies we're gonna make, to come out. But we're not gonna figure out how we're gonna tie them together and weave them together in a cohesive way. First misstep by DC. Totally was not coming up with a plan. Their plan was let's catch up to Marvel. Wrong plan. If you did the your superhero universe different than Marvel, then even when Marvel fizzles out, if it ever happens, or even when the superhero bubble bursts, which may never happen, or maybe years, decades from now, who knows? You still could have taken back that thunder and got your own shine, got your own thunder, because if you were making good movies that were darker and grittier and for adults, you would be giving us something different than Marvel, and we would all flock to the movies to see it because it's different. As long as they're good movies. But you're not doing that. You're just trying to compete. Rushing story, rushing character, and giving us incoherent messes for movies. That's what Batman vs. Superman is, an incoherent mess. It does not stand well on its own. It doesn't even stand well within the collective movie universe. Suicide Squad, same thing. It's a collective mess. And honestly, I have high hopes for Wonder Woman, but I'm trying to keep them at a minimum because DC's done good with trailers before and the movie comes out and it's a convoluted mess. And I have a bad feeling that Wonder Woman is going to be the same thing, a convoluted mess. With no clear direction and no clear story or no care for the character or the movie as a standalone project. All right, so DC heard Marvel was coming out with Civil War. Oh my God, heroes versus heroes. What are we gonna do? Let's push out Batman versus Superman right away. Heroes versus heroes that have to come together eventually to a common understanding for whatever reason. Okay, so let's compete with that. Let's push out this garbage. The character development, who cares? You know why Civil War worked? We had years and movies of these characters, these relationships, building up to this confrontation. Batman vs. Superman? No. We got 20 minutes of why this was going to be a conflict, and then the rest of the movie was all over the place. There was no emotional connection for me with Superman in that moment, in that movie. No emotional connection with me with Batman in that moment, in that movie. Wonder Woman shouldn't even been in that movie in that capacity. Lex Luthor, you never understand him as a person once in the whole movie. You want to compete with Marvel? You should be trying to outdo Marvel. Make your movies grown up, darker and grittier. Doesn't mean every character has to be mopey, dark, and grumbly. But you can do that for your tone of your universe with some light characters here and there, because that's real life and that's how it should be. Even in a comic book world. So Civil War worked because we fleshed out the characters. The story was already there from movies before. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It was great that Batman vs. Superman connected it with Man of Steel, with having the opening scene, and the problem that Batman has with Soup is because of Man of Steel. That was great, and I was getting more and more excited the further that scene played out in the theaters. And then what they did with the movie was just terrible. Okay, so Batman vs. Superman tried to compete with Civil War. We see why the two didn't work. One had character development. One had no character development. One had a story that made sense and was actually little bits and pieces were sprinkled out, and this playing out all through phase 2 of the Marvel movies. So through 6 movies, 7 movies, without 6 movies, we got little sprinkles here and there of Guardians aside. So 5 movies, a little sprinkles around of how this can happen. So when it happened, it was like, oh shit, this has been brewing for a while between these two characters, between these two ideals. Batman vs Superman did none of that. You had no emotional connection. Only if you love Batman vs Superman can you find anything about that. I mean, only if you love Batman and Superman as characters from the comics, from the cartoons, from past movies, can you find emotional connection. And in that case, you're reaching for movies and other mediums that have nothing to do with what you're watching. When I'm watching Civil War, any emotional punch, any tension, any feeling I have at all doesn't come from the comics or my years of love for these characters. Because I had years of love for Batman and Superman. It didn't work there, right? My emotional connection and all the feelings I felt during Civil War came from every movie that came before it and all the storylines that came before it. So Batman vs. Superman failed because of that reason. Civil War was amazing because of that reason. Do you get it? Suicide Squad was DC's attempt to say, wow, look at what Guardians did. Everyone's saying it's the best Marvel movie. They took a bunch of characters nobody knew. Nobody. Only even comic nerds didn't know anything about Guardians. Only hardcore, die hard. As Collider Video calls them, sweaties, knew who Guardians were coming in to that movie. And look at what they did. DC's looking at that like, whoa, so let's do the same thing. And not only did they do the same exact thing, they even marketed the movie the same. But here's the difference. In Guardians, we get to know each character. There isn't too many of them. And we get to know each one. To where even if you learn nothing about the characters from any other medium but that movie, you at least know she's a badass killer, Gamora. Peter Quill's a smart-ass criminal. Drax is obviously a crazy murderer person who's in prison. Groot is a walking, talking tree alien. That's interesting. And Rocket is a talking raccoon. We don't learn too much about those two characters, but we learn enough to know who these people are, to get an emotional connection, to care about them, to care about their story, sorry about that, and where all of this is going. We get all of that. You don't get that in Suicide Squad. You only really get to learn really about 3 characters, and one of them you don't get to learn about to the end. That's Diablo. You learn how Harley Quinn, you learn Deadshot, you learn a little bit about well, I just said his name. What's his name? I don't know. The fire dude, El Diablo. But you don't get to know anything about the other characters. You don't care, and they're not in it enough. So when you get somebody like Killer Croc and Captain Boomerang, you expect them to be the Rocket and Groot. And yes, they are the comic relief aside from Harley, I guess. But they're not in it enough. They barely do anything. And the characters fall flat. That's their first mistake, where they tried to compete with Guardians but didn't do it right. Guardians, you feel the characters. You know who they are. You actually even like them even though they're bad people. Suicide Squad, yeah, that works for 2 characters. Not the rest of them. The rest of them are all throwaways. So it's really the Harley Deadshot movie. Then you have the action. The action in Suicide Squad was shit. I'm sorry, it was shit. There was maybe 1 or 2 cool things. Other than that, it was garbage. Harley did some cool shit. Guardians, the action is good. It's fun. It's engaging. You want to see it. You're like, oh my God, Rocket and Groot are badass. You had none of those moments in Suicide Squad where you're like, oh. You had none of that. None of that at all. You have some, all right, that was cool. Oh, that was neat. Oh, that was a cool little reference. That's it. Guardians, packed with references, packed with Easter eggs, packed with action, packed with comedy. The ending of Guardians sucked to me. I hated the ending of Guardians. The whole dance thing, the way they took out Ronan, all of that, I hated it. The rest of the movie was fantastic. And the ending wasn't so bad it ruined the rest of the movie for me. It didn't. It made it where everyone was saying Guardians is the best Marvel movie, it definitely made it not the best Marvel movie for me. But I enjoyed it a lot. Batman vs. Superman, I only rewatched so I could hopefully like it the second time. And I didn't. The last thing they did wrong with Suicide Squad vs. Guardians is the villain. Guardians are in space. This is Star Wars, essentially. Superheroes in space. They should have this all-powerful villain. They should have this villain who wants to destroy worlds and has all this crazy shit going on. Because that's who they are. Super-powered people in outer space. Suicide Squad are street-level criminals. Some with superpowers. Some that are just really talented at what they do. And they're going up against witches and monsters, and they shouldn't be. They should have been dealing with a street-level threat that could have been a threat to Metropolis or Gotham or multiple cities, but not a threat on reality and life as we know it. They shouldn't have been dealing with the Enchantress. It should have been. They had the Joker in there, and I thought Jared Leto did good for the 10 minutes he's in the movie, but they should have had him be the villain. That's it. Or another street-level baddie. You did not need the Enchantress to be the villain, at least not in the first movie. It didn't make sense. It felt out of place. It didn't feel cohesive within the story. Guardians, Ronan, Nebula, Thanos felt like they belonged there. Enchantress felt like she didn't belong here. I'm almost done, I promise. 21 minutes, I'm almost done. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Wonder Woman. Now, I know I haven't seen it, and I really want to see it, and I would really love to love it, but I think it's going to be another convoluted mess, in my opinion. When I see it, I will give you an honest review, whether I like it or I don't. But to me, what it looks like they're doing now is saying, well, we can actually take a little bit of Thor and Cap and put it into this one movie and replicate that. And I say this a million times. It's okay to borrow ideas. It's okay to bite. It's even okay to almost steal an idea, as long as you make it your own and make it work within the context of your film, and you're not doing it just to steal it or just because you can't be creative. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. It's okay to do those things. But look, Batman vs. Superman tried to rip off Civil War, in my opinion. Suicide Squad tried to rip off Guardians, in my opinion. Now Wonder Woman is going to probably try and rip off Cap and a little bit of Thor. And then I have a feeling that Aquaman is going to be kind of ripping off Thor. And, you know, it's okay to take these ideas, but you have to make them work for you, your characters, and your story. And this is why the Marvel is now, I don't even know how many movies, 12, 13, 14 movies in or something like that. They're on their third phase of movies, and they're constantly churning them out. People love them. They're great quality. They have flaws. They're formulaic. They need to break that and start making movies a little different. I thought they were going to do that with Phase 3. I was hoping Doctor Strange was going to be like a horror film. You know, like how Ant-Man was kind of on the comedy side. And Guardians is like a space opera. So I thought they were going to really start changing things up. But they're really just keeping the same formula with a different dressing, a different setting. I love the MCU. I have my problems with it. So DC fans, go easy on me. I'm not a total Marvel fanboy. I'm a hardcore DC fan. I want these movies to work. I want them to be better. When I heard they were going gritty and dark and realistic, yeah, give me that. It's different than what Marvel's giving me, somewhat. Marvel tries to stay pretty grounded too, but not dark and gritty. Give me that. But don't give me mopey, angry Superman every movie. Don't give me characters that I don't understand, even though I know the character in the context of the movie, or I don't get their actions. Don't give me characters just to give me characters. Don't rush Justice League, because I guarantee you Justice League is going to feel like the Avengers. There's not going to be much different, and it's probably not going to work because it's going to be a convoluted mess where we don't understand the characters. The reason why the Avengers worked, where everyone said there's no way the Avengers can work as a movie. No way. Everyone used to say that. You know why it worked? Because all the characters had their own time to shine before the movie came out. So we knew who everybody was, even the villain. We even knew Loki. We knew what was going on. They didn't have to explain that. They got right into the movie, right into the action, right into the fun. Whereas now Justice League, we know Batman, we know Superman, who's dead, apparently. We know Wonder Woman. We met Flash for 2 seconds. So now we have to get to know Cyborg, and we have to get to know Aquaman, and we have to get to know Flash, and we have to, get to know these characters, and we have to get to know the villain, and you're going to have to explain all these other characters, and you got Commissioner Gordon in there, and whoever the fuck else you're going to put in the movie, and I don't know any of these people in this cinematic world. So for you comic fans, I'm a comic fan too. So for us comic fans, we may understand all that and may not be that big of a deal, but for the average moviegoer, their head's going to be fucking spinning by the end of Justice League. Not by the end of Avengers, though. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a right way to do things and a wrong thing. Marvel did it right. Planned it out and worked it out. DC did it wrong. This video is way too long. I'm sorry, guys. 26 minutes. Please, I hope you watched the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to sign off now. Hit me up down below. Show me some love. That's it for this vid. I'll see you guys next time. I have some more coming up on these where I can break the movies down individually so that it's not this long of a video. I apologize for the length. You guys have a great day, and I will see you next time.